The Drydus Senate chamber hummed with anticipation as Julian Vanderbilt surveyed the cavernous room from his post high in the grand entryway. Senators from 1,000 worlds streamed through the colossal bronze doors, a kaleidoscope of skin tones, facial structures, and fashions reflecting the diversity of the burgeoning Drydus Confederation. Vanderbilt stood rigid in his matte black armor, a silent sentinel amidst the bustle. His HUD identified each delegate, their home world, and political affiliation scrolling across his visor. The senators from the core world strode in first, draped in regal purple robes, trailed by coteries of aides and servitors. They represented Drydus itself, with its sprawling cities and vast agro-complexes and the industrial powerhouses of the inner colonies. Next came the delegates from the mid-rim, hailing from terraformed garden worlds and glittering orbital metropolises. Their garb was more subdued, but their bearing no less proud. Vanderbilt noted the representatives of Nieuwe Rotterdam, a hub of art and culture, and the renowned shipwrights of Epsilon Station. Finally, the outer colony senators arrived, their hardscrabble worlds reflected in their utilitarian attire and weather-beaten faces. Among them were the Kuiper barons, rulers of far-flung asteroid outposts, and the AG magnates of the frontier agro-worlds. They spoke in hushed tones, casting wary glances at their core world counterparts. As the senators took their seats in the amphitheater-like chamber, a hush fell over the room. The great doors swung shut with a resounding boom, and Emperor Julius Franco strode in, his crimson cloak billowing behind him. He cut an imposing figure, his powered armor gleaming beneath his regalia, his stern visage projected on holoscreens throughout the chamber. Senators of Drydus Franco began, his voice amplified and translated into 100 tongues. I come before you today to celebrate our victories and confront our challenges. Vanderbilt listened intently as the emperor recounted the latest triumphs against rebel factions in the outer colonies. The 3rd Drydus Marines had routed the insurgents on Helios Prime, securing the vital warp nexus. The 7th Fleet had broken the siege of Novus Carthage, relieving the beleaguered agro world. But even as the emperor spoke of victory, Vanderbilt sensed an undercurrent of tension. Some senators, especially those from the frontier, shifted uneasily in their seats. Others, draped in the finery of the core worlds, seemed to stifle yawns, their attention drifting. And then there were the whispers, rumors of corruption and subversion that had reached even Vanderbilt's ears. Certain senators, it was said, were more beholden to their own ambitions than the good of the empire. Some even whispered of collusion with the very rebels they claimed to oppose. As the emperor concluded his address and yielded the floor to the senators, Vanderbilt couldn't shake the feeling that the real battles lay ahead, not on some distant front, but right here in the heart of Drydus power. He adjusted his rifle and scanned the room, ready to meet any threat. In the empire of Drydus, a guard's duty was never done. As the emperor took his seat, the Senate chamber erupted into a cacophony of voices. Senators from the core worlds were first to take the floor, eager to tout the empire's successes. My esteemed colleagues, began Senator Marcus Aurelius of Drydus Prime, his holographic visage towering above the assembly. I am proud to report that our granaries are overflowing. The agro-complexes of Drydus have achieved record yields, ensuring that no citizen of the empire goes hungry. Murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber. Vanderbilt noted the smug looks exchanged between the core world delegates. Next, Senator Alara Voss of Alpha Station took the stage, her augmetic eyes gleaming. The shipyards of Alpha Station are operating at peak capacity, she declared, producing the most advanced warships in the known universe. And our quantum computing division has made breakthroughs that will revolutionize navigation and communication across the empire. A polite applause followed, but Vanderbilt sensed a growing unease among the outer colony representatives. They sat stiffly, their faces grim. The representative from Nieuwe Rotterdam, a willowy woman in a shimmering gown, spoke of a cultural renaissance on her world, of great works of art and music celebrating the empire's glory. But her words were cut short by a gruff voice from the back of the chamber. While you core worlders celebrate, growled Senator Janus Rix of the frontier agro world Tiberius IX, our colonies are under siege. The rebels grow bold, striking at our farms and disrupting our supply lines. We need more legions, not more art. The chamber erupted into shouting. frontier delegates leaping to their feet, core worlders shouting them down. Accusations flew like volleys of resource hoarding, of favoritism, of neglect. The core worlds grow fat and complacent, bellowed a Kuiper baron, while our outposts are bled dry. The frontiers drain our resources with their constant demands, retorted a senator from Drydus Prime. Vanderbilt's HUD lit up with threat assessments as the argument escalated. His finger tightened on the trigger of his rifle. Then, with a deafening boom, Emperor Franco slammed his scepter on the podium. A shock wave of sound and kinetic energy rippled through the chamber, silencing the rabble. Enough, Franco's voice boomed. I will not have this august body descend into petty squabbling. We are the Empire of Drydus, and our strength lies in our unity. The Emperor's gaze swept the room, locking eyes with each senator in turn. The Empire remains strong. Our legions are indomitable, our resources vast. But sacrifices must be made by all of us for the security and prosperity of our 1,000 worlds. As the Emperor spoke, Vanderbilt couldn't help but wonder about the nature of those sacrifices. The core worlds seemed reluctant to part with their riches, while the outer colonies grew increasingly desperate. How long could the center hold against the centrifugal forces pulling the empire apart? Franco raised a placating hand. But take heart, senators. For our next order of business is the very security you demand. General Titus Brecken of the Drydus Marines will now brief us on the state of our military campaigns. As the general strode to the podium in his battle-scarred armor, Vanderbilt felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps the wisdom and might of the Emperor and his legions could yet hold this fractious empire together. But as he scanned the room, noting the simmering resentments and hidden agendas, he couldn't shake the feeling that the real threat to Drydus lay not beyond its borders, but within them. General Titus Brecken cut an imposing figure as he took the podium, his powered armor still bearing the scars of 100 campaigns. He surveyed the Senate chamber with a warrior's gaze, assessing, evaluating. Senators of Drydus, he began, his voice a gravelly rumble. I come before you today not to boast of our victories, but to speak plainly of our challenges. The chamber grew quiet, the senators leaning forward in their seats. Even the core worlders, so often insulated from the realities of war, seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. Our legions are the finest in the known universe, Brecken continued. The 3rd Marines have crushed the rebel insurgency on Helios Prime. The 7th Fleet has secured the Kuiper Expanse, and the Praetorian Guard has fortified the Helios Gate, ensuring the safety of our warplanes. A murmur of approval rippled through the room, but Vanderbilt, attuned to the subtleties of the general's tone, sensed a but coming. However, Brecken said, his voice hardening, we are not omnipotent. The rebels grow more cunning, more desperate. They strike at our agro worlds, hoping to starve us out. They raid our supply lines, seeking to bleed us dry. They infiltrate our very ranks, sowing discord and doubt. A chill ran through the chamber. Senators exchanged uneasy glances, suddenly wary of their neighbors. Senator Rix of Tiberius IX leapt to his feet, his face flushed with anger. General, I demand orbital bombardment of the rebel strongholds on my 3 moons. Scorch the traitors from the very ground they befoul. A chorus of shouts erupted, some in support, others in protest. Vanderbilt saw a dangerous gleam in some senators' eyes, a hunger for blood and vengeance. But Brecken silenced them with a chopping motion of his hand. Senator Rix, we will not sacrifice loyal imperial subjects for a temporary gain. The Marines will root out this evil through superior strategy and valor. Orbital bombardment is a blunt instrument, and we are surgeons. Rix sank back into his seat, his face twisted in a scowl. But others took up his cry. The general coddles the rebels, shouted a Kuiper baron. We must strike hard and fast before they strike us. The military hoards our resources, retorted a core world senator. We cannot pour all our wealth into a bottomless pit of war. Brecken raised his voice above the din. Senators, hear me. The Drydus Marines stand ready to defend every inch of our empire. But we cannot do so without your support. We require the resources to mount effective campaigns, to protect our supply lines, to fortify our bases. He paused, letting his words sink in. I ask not for blind obedience, but for trust. Trust in the wisdom of your emperor and in the valor of your legions. Give us the tools, and we will secure the future of Drydus." As Brecken stepped down from the podium, the chamber buzzed with heated conversation. Vanderbilt could see the battle lines being drawn between those who favored all-out war, those who sought to protect their own interests, and those who genuinely wanted what was best for the empire. Emperor Franco rose, his presence commanding instant silence. Vanderbilt straightened, sensing that the true test of Drydus' future was about to begin. "Senators," the emperor intoned, "General Brecken has spoken wisely. But I sense that there is more at work here than mere military matters. I sense a rot at the heart of our empire, a corruption that threatens to undo all that we have built." Vanderbilt felt a chill run down his spine. The emperor's words were not those of a man content with his rule. They were the words of a leader preparing for a reckoning. And as he scanned the suddenly nervous faces of the senators, Vanderbilt couldn't help but wonder who would be found wanting when that reckoning came. Emperor Franco's words hung in the air like a gathering storm, the Senate chamber deathly silent in their wake. Vanderbilt felt the tension crackling like static, saw the beads of sweat forming on senators' brows. The emperor surveyed the room, his gaze penetrating, unflinching. "For too long," he began, his voice a controlled thunder, "this august body has been a nest of vipers, of self-serving schemers more concerned with their own power than the good of the empire." A ripple of shock and outrage ran through the chamber. Some senators leapt to their feet in protest, but a steely look from the emperor sat them right back down. "I see it in your lavish robes," Franco continued, pointing an accusing finger at the core world delegates, bought with the wealth that should be funding our legions. "I hear it in your whispered deals and alliances, forged not for the benefit of Drydus, but for your own gain." He turned to the outer colony representatives, who looked on with a mix of hope and trepidation. "And you, who cry out for aid while hoarding your resources, who demand protection while undermining the very unity that ensures it." The emperor's voice softened, but lost none of its intensity. "But I also see the true spirit of Drydus in this room. In the steadfast service of our military," he nodded to General Brecken, "in the tireless work of those who truly seek to better our empire." His gaze lingered on a few notable senators, those known for their integrity and dedication. Franco straightened, his armor glinting in the chamber's lights. "And so I issue this edict. From this day forward, each world in our glorious expanse must commit fully to the cause of Drydus. The core worlds will provide the material, the technology, the wealth. The colonies will provide the raw resources, the manpower, the frontier grit. And all will bend their efforts to the support and glory of our legions." The chamber erupted in a chaos of shouts and objections, but Franco silenced them with a slash of his hand. "There will be no more division, no more bickering over scraps while our enemies circle like vultures. We are the empire of Drydus, and we will stand united, or we will fall divided." He turned to General Brecken. "General, you will have your resources. Every legion will be brought to full strength and readiness. You will root out the rebel scum from every corner of our domain." Brecken bowed his head. "It will be done, my emperor." Then Franco turned his piercing gaze back to the senators. "They know this. My Praetorian Guard will be watching. Any hint of corruption, any whiff of treason, and they will fall upon you like the wrath of the gods. You will give our military what they need to secure our empire, or you will face the consequences." The chamber was silent, the senators still as statues, barely daring to breathe. Vanderbilt felt a surge of admiration for his emperor, mixed with a hint of foreboding. Franco was a strong leader, perhaps the strongest Drydus had ever known. But his methods were as harsh as they were effective. "This is the dawn of a new era for Drydus," Franco declared, his voice ringing with finality. "An era of unity, of strength, of unquestioned dominance. An era where the might of our legions and the will of our people shall bend the very stars to our purpose." He raised his fist in a salute. "Ave Imperium Drydus." The cheer was taken up by the senators, at first tentatively, then with growing fervor. "Ave Imperium Drydus. Ave Imperium Drydus." As the chant echoed through the chamber, Vanderbilt couldn't help but join in, swept up in the moment, in the vision of a Drydus united and unassailable. But as the emperor strode from the chamber, his crimson cloak billowing behind him, Vanderbilt felt a flicker of doubt. Franco had silenced the discord, at least for now. But at what cost? The Praetorian Guard were a blunt instrument, as likely to breed fear and resentment as loyalty and unity. And what of those senators who would now face the emperor's wrath? Would they bend the knee, or would they break? And if they broke, would they shatter the fragile peace Franco had imposed? As the senators filed out, some jubilant, some ashen-faced, Vanderbilt couldn't shake the feeling that this was not the end of Drydus' troubles, but merely the beginning. The wars to come would not just be fought on distant battlefields, but in the very heart of the empire itself. The future of Drydus hung in the balance, and Vanderbilt knew that he, like every citizen of the empire, would have a part to play in tipping that balance towards glory, or towards ruin. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to leave it a like. If you'd like to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.